I'm Terry Cutler, and I wanted to really thank you so much for having me present to you today. I got to tell you, I'm both challenged and excited. I'm excited because I get to give back what I'm so fondly passionate about, but I'm challenged because this topic can last like hours long, and I've got like 30 minutes to compress everything and get it done for you. So I have an interesting job where I get hired by companies to legally hack into their systems, help them find all the holes before the bad guys do. And armed with that knowledge, I like to train the general public on how to keep safe online. So here's some of the topics we're going to cover today. So I'll rapidly do a quick introduction to me about who I am, what I'm doing, where I'm going. And then I'm going to talk about the rise of online gaming and how millions of people are actually a target of cybercrime online. We're talking about some facts and stats about online gaming privacy, some common forms of cyber attacks that are actually targeting online gamers. We're going to cover some practical and useful tips to avoid becoming a victim. And my favorite part of the show, which is the Q&A. So I'm Terry Cutler. I've been in IT for over 20 years. The largest company not that long ago was Novell. And in 2005, I got inspired by watching shows like CSI and 24. I'm like, how's Chloe O'Brien breaking all these systems so fast? And that's when I learned there was actually a course called the Certified Ethical Hacker, where they're going to teach you these techniques to protect companies and individuals. And what happened is I took this knowledge and I felt it was my duty to educate the general public. So I do a lot of talks in schools, conferences on how to keep safe online. And I'm also doing a lot of dabbling in technology that allows me to hack back hackers legally. I'm also a brand ambassador for the Missing Children's Network. And what was happening over the last 10 years was my name was circulating around because of the information I was sharing. And now I've become a go-to expert for most media outlets across Canada. So whenever there's a data breach that comes out, I usually go on air to talk about how it happened, what people can do to protect themselves. And which probably led to one of my, for me, it was a weird award, but in 2018, I was named #1 most influential person in cybersecurity, which I found strange because I can't even influence my kids to come to the table without an iPad. So, and then the same thing happened again in 2019. What happened later on was I couldn't be in, I was getting so many requests to speak at conferences and such, and I couldn't be in 50 places at once. So I took everything from my head and put it into an online course that you can watch at your own pace. Then I got frequently asked to write a book. I didn't want to write a book. Then I wrote a book. And ironically, it became a #1 bestseller on Amazon a couple of weeks ago. So the book launched on May 1st, and it was already on a bestsellers list. So I'm the founder of Cyology Labs. We do audits, managed services, everything we can to protect companies from cyber threats. So enough about me. If you want to learn more, Google is your friend. So let's quickly talk about the rise of online gaming and how millions of online players are now a target of cybercrime. So, but let's quickly break down some terminology, because you might be asking yourself, well, what's an online game? You know, what's a gamer? What's an enthusiast gamer? So basically an online game is a game that's either played partially or primarily online through the internet or some type of computer network, right? Which can be played by millions of people. So for example, Fortnite is played by millions of people online, but a computer network would be a game similar to what we used to play back in the early 2000s, like Doom, right? Used to, on your lunch break, used to all play up on a network with your colleagues and blow each other up. A gamer is basically a person who likes to play interactive games. So it could be a video game, tabletop, or even a physical game like tag. These are the guys who like to enjoy games like Dungeons and Dragons or tennis, okay? These are all gamers. But an enthusiast gamer is like a subdivision, right? Same corporation, different division. These guys love to get the best of the best hardware and technology, the best in class performance to make sure their games don't lag. So I used to be one of these guys who used to spend thousands of dollars on their computer. And at one point, it's like you're dishing out all this money, you just can't keep up, which is why I switched over to a console game. So let's quickly look at how far we've come, okay? So when I grew up, I was born in the 70s, started gaming in the 80s, and Missile Command was one of my favorite games on the Atari video game system. And then the other game I used to play a lot was this game called Pole Position, which was also an arcade favorite. And I remember spending so many hours at the arcade playing this game. And then shortly after this, a new version of a game called Outrun came out around 1986. And you can see the evolution in graphics. And I remember playing so much for this game. I used to like wreck this car and it never had a scratch on it, ironically. And then if we look about 10 years later after that, you got games like Blur. Okay, you can see the graphics are way better. And another game that just came out shortly after that is called Forza. And this game took years to make with hundreds of developers. And the rumors are this thing cost over $35 million to produce. And this thing looks so real. Okay, and it's only getting better and better now with virtual reality. So we've gone from the console games to the online games to now what's called esports. Now, for those of you on the call that don't have a clue what I'm talking about, esports now is $1 billion industry. And pretty much most of its revenue comes from sponsors like Mountain Dew, Red Bull, Audi. And what it is now is it's a tournament where they can even they can live stream the event. And what we're noticing is that players between the age of 18 to 25 are spending more time watching other people play than actually watching broadcast sports. So let me show you quickly what that looks like. So now gamers are showing up to watch other gamers play and compete. Okay, so we've come a long way from the Atari 2600, folks. And so now they're playing in front of hundreds or thousands of people and possibly millions of people as it's being live streamed. Okay, they're competing against other groups, and kids can be earning a lot of money. So let's take, for example, this guy here, Kyle. He's AKA Booga. He's the Fortnite World Cup solo champion. This guy took home over $3 million. Okay, so which begs the question is like, you know, are my kids playing too much games just to waste time, or are they actually going to make a career out of this thing? And that's one thing I know is whenever I'm presenting in front of schools and I ask them, what do you want to be when you grow up? Almost pretty much all of them say, I want to be a YouTuber. Well, they can be earning a living through YouTubers as well. Now, the problem is with all this online fame and activity brings, unfortunately, cyber attacks. So if we look at some facts, okay, about online gaming privacy. In 2011, you may have noticed or remembered there was over 77 million accounts that were hacked by the PlayStation Network. And then later on, there was another denial of service attack that came out and actually shut down the Xbox Live or the Sony PlayStation Network. And all the kids didn't know what to do for like days. So let me quickly talk about some of the common cyber attacks that most gamers are going to face. But I want to show you first a real life case study. And what was interesting about this case study is that, as you might know, I get a lot of requests for, you know, when I have my live shows, people send in their questions. And I usually get appointments saying, you know, I'm being hacked, or I'm being spied on by my significant other, or I'm being harassed online. And usually I can't do much for these folks because it's out of their budget and such. But this last person that called me up, it's like, yeah, I'm a gamer, I'm being harassed. I'm like, oh, I want to share your story because my talk right now revolves around this. So I want to hear more about this. So I've changed the names of the people in this story to hide the victims. But basically, Cindy's a 32-year-old single mom gamer. Okay, so she's been a gamer for about 5 years, and she was being harassed online, and she got caught up in what's called a romance scam, and by someone on Twitch. So he claimed to be a police officer from Ohio. And one of the problems that she did was she shared too much personal information. I'll give you an example. So the guy asked her, you must have had too much information on her already. And I'm going to show you how you can find that information as well on yourself. So basically the guy asked her, so, hey, if you had where would you go if you had where's your number one place in the world you'd actually want to go? Okay. And she got all excited and she answered it. But that question was part of her security questions. Okay. The other issue was her birthday was also on Facebook. And then later on, she met another guy named Robert. And that's when things started to get weird. They started off with small talks, and then he started to romance her a little bit, right? Proposing a relationship. So she felt a little weird, and she started connecting with another person who's on Twitch who was also connected to this guy, Robert. And they shared some information that revealed that Robert might not be who he is. And that's when Robert found out about this and started spreading misinformation, which led to actual death threats. So some people actually started calling her employer, and now what's happening is her employer was auditing her. And with all this harassment, she couldn't perform at her job. And then she had to go on sick leave. And not even the police was able to help her out. Okay, because they don't have the resources, they don't have the budget. So you need to make sure that you are actually self-aware of how much information about you is online. And I'm going to show you some of that, how to do that in the tips section. So some of the common forms you're going to see is one of them is called denial of service attack. This is where your computer could possibly be infected, and your computer will be used to commit a crime against other systems. So do you remember back in the day, whenever you used to listen to the radio and they would do like a contest, they would say, okay, if you're the caller number 9, you're going to win a prize. And then you start calling the radio station and you hear this fast, busy signal. Well, that means that the system is overloaded. And it's the same concept here. All these computers are going to attack a system like Sony PlayStation or Xbox Live and knock their service offline, I mean. Another issue that happens is around spoofed websites. Okay, it's where you get tricked into clicking on a link you're not supposed to, and then you think you're signing into the legitimate website, but you're actually giving away your credentials to an attacker. Okay, this is the most common form of cyber attack right now. The other issue that we're seeing now, you may have heard of ransomware, but what about ransomware in a game? Right? Not many people have ever heard of this, but what happens is that they found a way to infect some of the games, and if you get caught up in a ransomware, it's going to infect all of your saved game data. And once you're infected with it, they're going to ask you for $500 to release your data, right? So there's nothing worse than spending months on a game and your saved data is no longer there. You have to start all over again. So some of these games that got affected are games like Call of Duty, World of Warcraft, Minecraft, and even World of Tanks. So that's just a couple of that are high profile. The other one you're going to see is around brute forcing and keyloggers and rootkits. Okay, I know I'm maybe speaking Chinese to a bunch of you, but a brute force attack is basically where I'm going to try and guess your password and it's going to try and hack into your account. The other issue around keyloggers is that if you install a piece of software that you weren't supposed to, I can actually spy on what you're typing in on your computer. So if you're logging into an Amazon account or to your Fortnite, it'll actually capture the username and password. And if I'm able to get a rootkit onto your computer, I'm able to turn on the webcam without the light going on. I can listen to what's happening in the room with the microphone. Share your screen, steal your passwords. Like the possibilities are endless. The other one we're seeing is around phishing campaigns or social engineering. It's where I'm going to social engineering is the psychological manipulation of people. So this is where I'm going to trick you and gain your trust. And then I'm going to use information that you typically wouldn't give out. I'm going to use it against you in a cyber attack. And this is where like some of these scams are so sophisticated, you don't even realize you're in a scam. So let's quickly talk about some facts about online gaming privacy. So in 2011, 77 million accounts were hacked on the Sony PlayStation network. And around 70% of South Korea's population had their data stolen while playing online. Okay? So let's look at some practical tips. So some of these tips come from my online training course, Internet Safety University. So right now, how many of you guys know how to use Google? I know what you're thinking, right? You're an idiot, Terry. Who doesn't know how to use Google? So how many of you guys really know how to use Google? Right? So whenever I ask this question in live events, the hands usually start coming down once I ask the second question, okay? So I want to show you some ways that you can actually find information about yourself you typically didn't know existed. So the first thing we're going to do is go to Google settings and turn off safe search. Do you know why you want to turn that off? Now, the reason why you want to turn that off is because if there's any profanity linked to your name, it's not going to show up in the search. So you want to turn that off to make sure that everything is unfiltered so you can see everything, okay? So for this example, I'm going to use my name because the last time I used somebody else's name, inappropriate content showed up. So I'm not doing that anymore. So the first thing you want to type in is your first name and last name. So in my example, I end up with almost 600,000 results. Now, I'm not that famous, and that's just way too much information to find out about somebody. Do you know how you'd actually limit that search? If you said use quotation marks, you're correct. So you put quotes around your name. And if you notice now, I dropped from 600,000 to under 23,000 results. And the trick here is that when you enter quotes, it's going to ask Google to look for exactly what's in between those quotes. So even if you've misspelled something, it's going to look exactly for that. Because if you don't use quotes, it's going to look for the word Terry and Cutler as two separate searches. But this way, if you have it in quotes, it's going to look for one. But 23,000 results is way too much information also. Do you know how I would actually limit this even more? Well, maybe you belong to a sports team, right? Or maybe your kids belong to a sports team, or you're a parent that likes to drive the kids to school or to the soccer field. You want to add something that's relatable to you. And in my case, I actually, when I used to coach soccer, somebody created a website that had my cell phone number on it, along with other parents. And that's how I was able to find this information about myself, because I didn't put it there, right? I only know about the stuff that I put online. So I'm going to use Terry Cutler with the word hacker. And I dropped from 600,000 results to 23,000 to under 6,000, which now we're actually honing in on more information here, but it's still too much information. I already know about Digital Locksmith, Security Week. I know all this stuff. Do you know how I would actually remove myself from that search result? You can type in the minus key. So Terry Cutler, the word hacker, minus terrycutler.com, minus Security Week, minus Facebook, minus all these sites that you know about. And whatever's left over might be stuff that you didn't know about. Okay? So you want to make sure that you click on images to see if anyone's tagged you. See, in this case, someone tagged me in a bunch of toilets, but it's actually legit because I did a story about how I hacked a company by leaving 2 USB keys in their toilets, in the bathrooms. And after 2 hours, a curious employee plugged it in, which allowed me to hack into their system through the back door. You want to make sure there's any videos that maybe have your name in it. Okay. The other trick that not many people know about is called Google Alerts. This is where you can type in your information here, first name, last name, and whenever Google indexes a new website that had your name in it, it's going to send you an email. So here's an example of an alert that I have. So whenever I say I get published in the news somewhere, I'll receive an email like this. So this is a story that I did with Global News where where some kids were planning to murder another student. And while they were on chat, they didn't realize that the chat was also synchronizing to the iPad that was at home that the parents had access to. And the mom saw the text and alerted police, and they were able to stop the attack from happening. Now, how many of you guys know about viruses, worms, Trojan horses, logic bombs, social engineering, rootkits, botnets, and zombies? There's a lot of stuff here, but we're actually dealing with this on about every hour of our day. Every time you receive an email or click on a link, you're at risk of possibly getting attacked by one of these. Okay? So attacks you're pretty much familiar with, right? But what about a man-in-the-middle attack? This is where I'm trying to intercept the communication between you and whatever server you're talking to. Now, there's a place that you're actually most vulnerable that you used to probably go to before COVID. And if you think coffee shops, then you'd be correct, right? So there's nothing stopping me from showing up at that coffee shop and create a new Wi-Fi saying Starbucks free fast Wi-Fi. And anybody that connects to me and starts surfing the web, going to Facebook and such, I may be able to intercept their transmissions, okay? And possibly have you redirect to other websites, which will trick you into clicking on links. Let's quickly talk about some internet scams that are on the rise right now. So right now, everybody on this call has a porn star name, okay? The way it works is you pick the first month that you were born in and the day you were born in, and that is your porn star name. So if you're with somebody, introduce yourself as your porn star name. So I'm known as Kitty Terminator. And the reason why I bring this up is because so many of you love to do these online quizzes, right? What Disney character am I? And what's happening here is there's ways in these quizzes to trick you into revealing personal information. So they'll say, you know, what's your favorite character? What's your favorite color? What was the previous street you lived on? Well, wait a minute. Is that a banking question? So for those of you that like to click on these quizzes, just keep in mind that there's a purpose that they're trying to extract information from you. So going back to phishing attacks, which is the number one issue right now, 92% of correspondents that were done by a survey from O Canada confirmed that they received phishing attacks but didn't know how to deal with it. Okay, so let me just quickly show you a demonstration of a phishing attack. So here's a PayPal email that I received. So let me zoom in a second. Can you tell me what's wrong with this email? So the first one is the email address. And if you hover over the resolution link, this is where it's going to go to, paypal-secure-check.com, which has nothing to do with PayPal. Now, some people didn't know about this trick, but if you just leave your mouse over the link, it's going to show where it's supposed to go to. But now the problem is the hackers know this, and there's ways to get around this. So if you don't pay attention to what's happening in the lower left-hand corner, which is the link you're really going to go to, you're going to possibly be attacked. Here's another example, which came from Simpatico. Same thing. The email address is off. And if you hover over the click here, you're going to dynatom.se, which is a site in Sweden, which has nothing to do with Bell or Cogeco, okay? What about this one from Air Canada? So I actually purposely blanked out the Jonathan email. But if you hover over the link, it's asking you to go to gameworld.hr and download a zip file, which is actually very bad because there's a good chance that there's a software inside this zip file, which you're going to run and it's going to encrypt your computer and get hit with ransomware. Phishing attack revolves around me harnessing as much information about you. So say, for example, you went to a conference last year and I found out about it. I can say, hey, Cindy, I was at that same conference you were at. Here's a link to my photos. So you're going to think that, oh, it's not my typical Viagra email, and you're going to possibly click on that link. And that's where I'm going to be able to track you or infect you. And one of the issues we see often is that people create such lousy passwords, okay? They create crappy passwords, crappy password. So I want to show you now how to create almost an unbreakable password, okay? So you want to have a combination of uppercase, lowercase, and symbols, and you want to have between 16 and 25 characters long. I know what you're thinking, right? Is this guy nuts? Like, how do you remember a password this long? So my advice is to think of song lyrics or phrases. Okay, let's take an example. We're going to do one together. Here's a simple phrase. I had a great day at work 2020. Now, don't use this password because 20 million people have it, okay? So what you want to do here is take a simple phrase like this, remove the spacing, and capitalize each letter of the word. And this password alone will take 10 years to crack. But since we're all about beefing up our cybersecurity here, if you replace the O's with a 0 and the A's with that symbol, this thing will take like 39 centuries to crack. That is until I actually hack the server, okay? When I hack a server, this is what I see. I'll see, for you, it looks all gibberish, but it actually means a lot to me. So say we take, for example, this account named Nina. You'll see Nina, and then you have all this gibberish after her account. But that's actually her password that's been encrypted or scrambled to hide it from the individuals. But using an attack called pass the hash, now I'm not talking about the good old college days here, people. This is where I take an attack where I take this information, pass it off to a server, and it's going to log me in as you without ever knowing your password, okay? And that's why it's important that you turn on what's called two-step verification, also known as two-factor authentication. This is where you're going to enter your cell phone number into the social media account that you're going to be using. And what will happen is it's going to ask you for your username and password, and then a text message will come to your phone or through the Authenticator app to sign into the account. So this way, if your password ever does get compromised, they're not going to be able to get in without the code, okay? And what usually happens is when your passwords gets leaked out onto the web, so say websites like LinkedIn, Marriott, MyFitnessPal, who all got breached, while their usernames and passwords got leaked onto the dark web. And if your password is weak, you're going to receive what's called a sextortion scam. It's going to say, hey, Johnny, you don't know me, but your password is this. And it's your real password. And you're freaking out because, like, how did this guy get my password? And he says, I've got video of you on an inappropriate website. And if you don't want this stuff getting out, you better pay me in Bitcoin. And what happened was when this scam started circulating about a year and a half ago, I got so many requests that I actually had to do a film while I was on vacation about what to expect, how to avoid this, and how not to fall for it. There's a website that you can go to called Have I Been Pwned? Now, this is hacker talk for have I been owned or have I been hacked? So once you go to Google and start typing in have I been, it'll automatically find the rest of the site for you. And what will happen here is you're going to type in your email address, and it's going to tell you if your email address has been part of a data breach. So in my case, I've been part of 8 data breaches. So there's LinkedIn, MyFitnessPal, there's some other sites. But because my password is strong, I've never received this extortion email. Okay. So when we talked about Cindy a little while ago, we spoke about a romance scam. This is where from online and start a relationship and say, you know what, you actually have a family relative that left behind millions of dollars in gold and such. And to most people, they're going to say, oh, this is such a scam. But what they're doing now is they're actually looking you up on Ancestry.com, and they're going to find that you maybe had a relative from 1891 who was a gold miner and left behind some gold. And people actually like, oh my God, this is a true legit story. And they fall for the trick. Now, let's quickly talk about who the perfect victims are of all these crimes. Most victims are between the age of 11 and 14, okay? But this doesn't limit any other ages. Like we saw Cindy earlier, who was 32. They have little or no parental involvement, which means, like, you know, can they leave the house and go to mail a letter, for example? This is how the scammer is going to see if they're being monitored by the parents. Or has exclusive use to a computer in a private area. Now, back in the day, we used to say, I'm going to leave your computer in the kitchen so that I can keep an eye on you. But now no one does that anymore. And everything's moved to mobile. So the kids could be up in their bedroom at 3 o'clock in the morning, texting and reading email without your knowledge. So the first thing you want to do is you want to make sure that if your child's information is online, okay, make sure you go to all these sites. Make sure you do those Google searches like I showed you earlier. Because if we talk about some terminology here, you've got the travelers, the collector manufacturers, and the chatters. So the travelers are the guys that are really dangerous because they're willing to leave their house to fly or drive to meet your kid, okay? And they're only meeting in person for sexual purposes, okay? Now, the collectors are the guys that are just collecting child pornography. And these are the guys that, you know, they don't often make contact with a child, but you never know, okay? Then you've got these creepos that are the manufacturers, okay? These guys are the real scumbags. These are the guys that are creating the videos. And we've seen cases where these manufacturers are live streaming with other manufacturers and sharing child pornography in a live stream while having sex with a child, okay? So you really need to find out what's out there about your kid. And the last one is the chatters. These guys are just chatting with people, pretending to be a trusted authority, like you saw with Cindy, and get lured, okay? So the way it works is to do it in 6 steps. The first one is called befriending. It's where they're going to find out some of your likes and interests because you've posted this information on social media already. So say you're on Facebook, you might say, well, I like the Terminator movie, or I like skateboarding. Well, this guy is going to chat you up and you know, what do you like doing? And you're going to say, well, I like skateboarding. Say, oh yeah, me too. I like skateboarding. I just got the brand new Tony Hawk board. And he's going to build a bond with you. And then he's going to say, well, you know what? If ever you're not happy at home or you want to escape, you know, you can come and meet us at the skate park and we'll hang out. But using Google Street View, they're able to get familiar with your area. So if they say, let's meet across the street at the building with the green roof, you might think, oh, wow, this guy's from the neighborhood. But in fact, he might be 2 cities away for all you know. And that's where you're going to share some secrets that you typically wouldn't give out. And he's going to use it against you. And usually what happens then is that there's just so much information or maybe sexual situation happened, that eventually the truth is going to emerge. Okay, by then it's usually too late. And the issue we're seeing right now is we don't know who these predators are, because they could be anyone. There could be computer techs, gas station workers, airport workers, nurses, doctors. You have no idea. Okay, so just pulling out the statistics was like pulling teeth, because this information is confidential, right? They don't want to know who these people are. Now, another issue that you might be getting is around fake profiles. A lot of people get added by people they don't know. And in my case, the same thing happened to me. This attractive woman added me on Facebook. I had no idea who she was, so I wanted to see if she was real. So let me show you quickly now how to how to find out if this person is real or not. So what you can do is you can save that image to your computer, and then go to images.google.com. And then what you're going to do here is you're going to take that image and you're going to drag and drop it into Google. And then Google is going to analyze this photo and show you where else it's being used, and possibly tell you even who it is. So actually, in this case, it's a girl named Juliana Avalos who is suing Match.com for like $1 billion. Okay, so this is a tactic that you can use to see if your photos are being used and possibly being used to scam other people. Because we've seen cases where your photos on Facebook are not private, and people are saving it and creating fake accounts and re-adding your friends saying, hey, you know, I'm in London, I've been mugged, can you send me $500? Okay. Another trick you can use if you're using Chrome is, instead of saving this image to your desktop, dragging and dropping, you can just right click on the image and say, search Google for image. And it's going to do the exact same thing. So how do we know if our computer's been broken into? Okay. Usually I have the audience call this all out, but in this case, you're going to see your antivirus is going to start popping up and going crazy. You may have disk space that's disappearing on you. Your mouse could be moving by itself. You know, I've had a case in the past where, hey, Terry, my mouse is moving by itself. Is that normal? Like, no. So you got to really watch out for this stuff. There's another way to find out if your computer has malware on your computer, which is malicious software. Some of the symptoms you might be getting is your browser home starts to change. For example, say you open up Chrome and your computer is used to going to google.com, and now you open it up, it's going to ask.com. That's one way to know if your machine has potential malicious software on it. There's maybe new icons that are appearing somewhere on the desktop, or the performance is going really, really slow. We've seen so many cases where you buy a brand new computer and like the week later, it's dog slow, right? So there's so much stuff to cover here, but this is all I can cover in this time. So next steps, if you want, you can connect with me on social media. I have a ton of free stuff in my YouTube channels and such. You can check out internetsafetyuniversity.com, which has a ton of free content. My YouTube channel has a bunch of stuff. You can also visit me at terrycutler.com. And that is all I have for you. And if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, you can just point your camera at the screen and you'll connect with me. Thank you so much for everybody for having me. Now we can open up the questions if you have any. So one of the questions that's come in is, what are recommendations do we have to protect our children in cyberspace? Now that's a loaded question because there's so many ways to approach a target. Obviously, the first thing is to find out what's actually out there about your kid. Make sure you do those Google searches. If your child is young enough, you can install monitoring software on their computer, which will allow you to see what they're up to, even restrict screen time if you want. But apart from that, it's very, very difficult because the average person doesn't have the skill set to protect against a cyber attack, which is actually one of the reasons why I created Internet Safety University, was to get people started with what they can do to protect their systems as much as possible. Because remember, there's no silver bullet to stop a hacker or a predator. The goal is to make it as hard as possible for them to get in or trick you. Another question I get asked often is, what's the difference between a free antivirus and a paid version? Well, there's actually is a lot of big difference. So the free version, what they do is they obviously give it to you for free, but they're surveying you constantly to see what can be improved in their software, and they're using statistics from your free version to build up on the pro version, the paid version. And that's the biggest difference. The pro version has much more functionality and features to protect you from a cyber attack than the free stuff. So I obviously don't encourage you to get the free stuff. Go for the paid stuff all the time. So that's all I have for now. And of course, again, if you want to connect with me or ask questions, you can attend my live show either on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and or you can send emails or questions to ask@terrycutler.com. I'll be happy to answer them for you. Thank you, everyone.